You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Hey, everybody. I got here a few minutes early today and was talking with JD, who's the producer on the board. And I was talking about a show idea I had, which led us to talk about Gene Hackman. And we joked about Gene Hackman and how I think one of his greatest roles ever is the blind guy from Young Frankenstein, and how he ad-libbed the line, "Wait, don't go. I was going to make espresso," which I think is just a brilliant line in that moment. But by doing that, we got into Blazing Saddles. And if you ever get a chance to listen to the director's cut or the director's commentary for Blazing Saddles, it's Mel Brooks giving all the behind-the-scenes stuff. But there's a great story out there about Gene Wilder and how he got involved in playing the Cisco Kid. And he wasn't supposed to play the kid. He wanted to. He and Mel were working together. They were doing Young Frankenstein. Mel was doing Blazing Saddles. Gene wrote the Young Frankenstein script, partly because his agent wanted a role for both Gene, Peter Boyle, and Marty Feldman, who were all clients of the same agent. But Mel had Gene read Blazing Saddles, and Gene wanted to play the Cisco Kid, and Mel was like, "No, you're too young. I want an old drunk guy, like in the classic westerns, like Dan Day or something like that." He says, "You're too young. Play Hedy Lamarr." He's like, "I don't want to play Hedy Lamarr. That should be Harvey Korman. I want to play the Cisco Kid." And so Mel refused to budge. Gene refused to budge. And they went separate ways. And Mel went on to start filming. Well, the problem was that Mel got his wish. He got himself an old Western actor who, played the sidekick, drunkard type town guy. And they got him in there, and it's not Dan Day. They ended up going with somebody, I think it was Gibbs something. Don't remember off the top of my head. But they got him in to start filming. And the first scene they were going to film is the introduction between the Cisco Kid and Black Bart. And Bart walks in and says, and he's hanging up in the Cisco Kid's hanging upside down. Well, they bring this old actor in. They hang him upside down. He sits there and he's hanging there. He starts shaking. And Mel's watching this going, that is some method acting. I mean, he is looking like he's having a rough go. That is not acting. We need to get a paramedic. And sure enough, they pulled the guy down, and he was frothing at the mouth, and ended up in the emergency room. He was detoxing. He had tried to quit drinking. He had alcoholism. But yeah, so they had this whole thing going. So Mel had to suck it up, call Gene Wilder, who was in New York on a Friday, and went, "Hey, Gene, I'm in trouble. Do you want to play Cisco Kid?" And Gene's like, "Of course." He goes, "Can you be here Monday?" He said, "Well, yeah, but there's a problem. I don't know how to ride a horse." He says, "I'm from New York." He goes, "Can you be here Sunday?" And sure enough, Gene Wilder hopped on a plane, flew out to LA. On Sunday, learned to ride a horse. On Monday, he was drug into the cell, hung upside down, and they started filming, and movie history was made. I love that story. Mel Brooks is one of those guys, any chance you get to listen to the behind-the-scenes stuff with him, do it. He has a recent autobiography that came out, and if you get the audiobook, he reads it himself. Mwah. So worth it. So worth it. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Thank you to JD for figuring out his gig young. So I was right, it was gig. And thanks for the conversation before the show started, because I didn't know what I was going to say during the cold open. All right, let's see who we got here today. Ed is here, Clayton's here, Cole Gamer is here, Kenneth, Sheldon, Triple B. We got a full house. Nice to see it. Please hit that like button. Let's get those numbers up. And real quick, grab the link, drop it on your Facebook, on your social media, share it to people saying, come join us. We're going to talk Daredevil villains. Yes, we're going to talk Daredevil villains today. Why? Because it seemed like a really good topic when I was trying to figure out what to do today last night. All right, so, and I had fun writing up everything. So let's see, anything I missed was, Ed says, yes, I love the movie. Young Frankenstein is way up on my list of fun movies to watch. For me, Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles are like this on which one is better. And it's mainly whichever one I watched most recently or which scene I remember most recently, because I think they're both equally brilliant in what they do and everything about it. Mel Brooks does great movies, but he has a peak. He has the best films, and then he has the outer ones, you know. The 12 Chairs is not his best. Life Stinks is not his best. They're lower, but then you get like Dracula Dead and Loving It, which wasn't his peak, but there were some very funny moments, or Silent Movie, those kinds. But then you get to that middle part where he's going Young Frankenstein. He comes off of High Anxiety, which is brilliant if you're a Hitchcock fan. But you get into Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs, History of the World, Robin Hood Men in Tights. There is that era that he does, that run he does, where everything is just amazing. So, and then he does musicals. He writes the music. He's just uber talented. The closest I ever got to meeting Mel Brooks, and I hope still to someday, is to meet him. But I never got a chance. I haven't had a chance to meet him, but I did get to meet his son, Max. Max, of course, is the creator of World War Z and the Zombie Survivalist Guide, I believe. He used to work for Avatar when I did a lot of work for Avatar. And I got to meet him and a few other people at the Avatar booth. Warren Ellis, oddly enough, Axel Alonso from Marvel was at the Avatar booth when I was there too. So it was a lot of fun. I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Yes. Spaceball is such a good movie. All right. And it's technically History of the World Part 2, even though there is now a History of the World Part 2, because History of the World Part 2 was supposed to be Jews in space, and that is definitely Spaceballs. All right. We are going to do the news. We don't have a lot of news today, but I do have some fun stuff having to do with the Daredevil villain, so we're going to get into that. I've got some key Daredevil collectibles to do at the end of it. So it's a Daredevil day. You know, I should have rolled out my my Daredevil other guy. This is just my Q figure, but I have my Daredevil hot toy up there. I forgot to bring him down. I should have put him like right here, but I forgot. In fact, Jews in Space and Men in Tights are the same thing. I think JD was making a joke. So
no, they're literally the same song with different lyrics, is what I'm saying.
Oh. Okay. I thought you were making a joke about circumcisions. Saying there's space in the tights.
No. Like I meant
sure?
the two. Yeah, the two songs. The song for Robin Hood Men in Tights and the song for the end of History of the World.
Okay. So let's get to the news, shall we? We open up with some news about something big for Marvel, which has been, we got that Q figure for Sean. He's a big Daredevil fan as well. Very cool. All right. We have been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for whatever's going to happen with Jonathan Majors having to do with this court case. It's been 6 months since Jonathan Majors was arrested in New York City on domestic violence charges, and it keeps getting postponed and delayed. Well, there was a short hearing happening today, and today was supposed to be when everything got kicked off. This was going to be, we said move forward, everything. Nope. It was determined that another hearing will be held on September 15th, and in theory, they will pick a date, a trial date then. Today was supposed to be the actual start of the trial. And like I said, it's been delayed a lot. And this is DA Alvin Bragg, who is also going after Trump. This is his office going after Manhattan's office. And they're trying to prosecute the actor on misdemeanor charges stemming from an incident in and around Major's Chelsea apartment on March 25th. Although he was the one that called 911 in the spring, the actor is looking at up to a year behind bars if found guilty. Now, the last hearing was delayed because the prosecution just flat out wasn't ready. Assistant District Attorney Kelly Galloway, though, told the judge this morning that they were ready for trial. However, the defense lawyers stated in court that there were some deficiencies in discovery that still needed to be addressed. Major's lawyers told the judge, "We have written to the prosecutors regarding deficiencies in a so-called certificate of compliance filed by the DA's office that says prosecutors have turned over all required case evidence to the defense." So it sounds like something's missing. Now, let's see, I must my play. Oh, Major's defense team continues to insist that the actor is completely innocent and is a victim of a witch hunt. God, that term is just way overused nowadays. But it's due to racial bias that permeates the criminal justice system. In what might be related news, Marvel is promoting Loki season 2 more and more, and we're seeing Majors in those promotions more. Now, they kind of scaled back on a lot of it after the arrest. He wasn't really highlighted much in Loki on the Ant-Man and the Wasp stuff after. They delayed the release of the behind-the-scene thing, the assembled special. So it does seem like they were trying to back away from him, but now they're moving back in. And there's been lots of reports of video footage that shows the woman in question at a nightclub after the incident on the street, but before she was found in the apartment, that she had gone, and then Majors wasn't there. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this case. So again, this is definitely a case where all judgment needs to be completely held until the facts are put out there. Because this one does seem to be very, very twisty. Yeah. So, all right, let's move on. Last night was the 4th episode of Star Wars Ahsoka. And we'll talk about it tomorrow, because this is definitely one you want to see without spoilers. But the news today is that the 5th episode is coming to a theater near you, assuming you live in a large major city like Boston, Dallas, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, one of the big ones. Disney and Lucasfilms announced Wednesday that the upcoming Ahsoka Episode 5 will screen in select theaters as part of the Ahsoka mid-season fan celebration. Yeah, we're already at the mid-season. That seems kind of weird to me, but marking the midway point of the Disney Plus series, created by Dave Filoni, who co-conceived the character with George Lucas. The 8-episode series follows Ahsoka Tano, played by Rosario Dawson, former Padawan learner of the fallen Jedi Anakin Skywalker, played by Hayden Christensen, as she searches for Grand Admiral Thrawn, played by Lars Mikkelsen, and the missing Ezra Bridger, played by Iman Esfandi. Ahsoka Episode 5 will be available to stream as usual at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday next week, September 12th. But tickets for the theatrical showing are free, but you have to RSVP at their website, which is like GoFobo website. I don't know. You got to look that one up. Seats are limited. Event is first come, first serve. So why would Disney put the 5th episode of Ahsoka in the theater? Not the first 2 episodes, nothing like that. They're putting the 5th episode. Because if you watch the 4th episode, you realize something really big is about to happen. Really big. And it would make a lot more sense if you have been watching Rebels and Clone Wars, but you don't have to. But the ending of last night's episode was pretty severe. JD just checked. There are no passes left but Philadelphia and Seattle already, which means that fans are flocking to this to go see it in the theater, which tells you something. So if you're not watching Ahsoka, you might want to check it out because things are about to get serious. I was a little you can join a wait list. Okay. I was a little stunned with last night's episode. This whole series, we're at the halfway point of, with the end of episode 4, with the halfway point. It's kind of at where I expected the season to end. And we're already flying by. If 5th episode was the season finale, it would make sense to me. But it's not. There's 4 more episodes, and they're putting the 5th one on the big screen. So keep that in mind. All right, moving on. If you're wondering how Jeremy Renner's recovery is going, this news might help give you a clue, as Paramount Plus has decided to renew his series Mayor of Kingstown for a 3rd season. Now, Renner had kind of teased that this might be happening back in May when he posted an image of him from the show with the tag, "Might be time to start mentally preparation for 3." Now, it's confirmed that Renner will be returning. Some fans have been wondering since the actor's horrible snowplow accident on January 1st that broke more than 30 bones in his body if he would actually be returning to acting. Now, how much does this mean? This is more of a drama series. Will he return to the action stuff that he did for the MCU and for Mission Impossible? That remains to be seen. But it's also interesting that I don't think Paramount Plus could have canceled this show or said no, because it comes from Taylor Sheridan, and it's the 3rd best performing drama on the streamer, behind the 2nd and 1st best performing dramas, 1923 and Tulsa King, which are both from Taylor Sheridan. So pretty much Taylor Sheridan right now is carrying Paramount Plus. Not the Star Trek series, Taylor frickin' Sheridan. So, all right. And in more Marvel news, Marvel has announced the titles and brief synopsis for the upcoming 2nd season of I Am Groot. The 1st episode series that takes place roughly between Guardians of Galaxy Volume 1 and Volume 2 will continue. The 5-episode series will continue to focus on Baby Groot. So we're not moving along. He's still the little cute guy. And it's going to kick off with an episode called Are You My Groot?, where Groot stumbles across a strange egg in a nest while exploring the alien planet of Terma. He instantly falls for the little creature that emerges when the egg cracks, adopting it as his own. 2nd episode will be called Groot Noses Around, where Groot discovers a bionic nose-shaped device that grants him a sense of smell, and he quickly learns not to stick his nose where it doesn't belong. That will be followed by Groot's Snow Day. After landing on the ice planet of Falagar, Groot fashions a snowman with scraps of junk, inadvertently creating an unstoppable snowman robot that wreaks havoc. Okay, I'm in. Unstoppable snowman robot had me. 4th episode, Groot's Sweet Treat. That's the one we've seen the clip of him chasing it. As an intergalactic ice cream truck approaches Groot, desperate to get a treat, frantically scours the ship for coins. I love the idea that there's an ice cream truck in space. And finally, Groot and the Great Prophecy. And it says, in this adventure, narrated by the Watcher, Groot finds himself in the heart of an ancient Dreslar temple with a mythic prophecy he must fulfill to save the universe. Now, we know that the Watcher will be voiced by Jeffrey Wright, who also voiced the character in the What If series. And it's also confirmed that at some point during the series, for at least one episode, Bradley Cooper will return to voice Rocket. So, all right, guys, that is the news. We'll take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk Daredevil villains. Be right back.
Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rockin' Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
Programming on the EXP is made possible by viewers like you, or your local comic shop, or that Kickstarter you backed, or the publisher you like, or comic industry professionals who want to share a message with the world. Really, anyone who wants to advertise with us can. If you're interested in seeing a product you know and love, or are creating, or are publishing, or are involved with, advertised here on The Experience, and having your message shared with our viewers, please reach out by scanning the QR code below or visiting our website and using the contact form.
All right, guys, how you doing? We are back. We are going to talk Daredevil villains. And Daredevil's kind of an interesting character. He started off with Stan Lee wanting to do a character with disabilities. And in a lot of ways, he was created as a Batman pastiche. I mean, different, but still, he was treated that way when he was written. I don't think necessarily Stan Lee sat down and said, I'm going to write Batman. But I think once you come up with the concept of the character, you've got to come up with his villains and what happens to him and stuff like that. And a lot of the things that Stan put into the character really weren't played upon in the early days. There was a talk about the fact that he was a lawyer. In episode 1, Foggy and Matt opened their law firm. And other than at one point, I think he's in like 4 panels as a lawyer in the first 2 years. And then he is referred to by a judge who's kidnapped by the owl as one of the greatest trial lawyers of our time. We don't see that. There isn't a lot of courtroom drama as part of Daredevil, which you think there should be. And that's always been the kind of the hole that if I ever get a chance to pitch a Daredevil miniseries, that's the hole I want to play in. That what in 20 some odd issues, how did he become the greatest trial lawyer of our time? So they didn't do a lot of stuff like that. What they did do was have him go on a lot of dates and flirt with his secretary and pal around with his buddy Folie. But the villains and stuff, they weren't all that spectacular. You know, you really did get that sense that Marvel was trying to make a Batman, or at least follow the Batman plan. And his early villains almost feel like a copy of some of Batman's rogues, with a few exceptions. There were a couple that bust out of that. But, okay, we're going to start with the Jester. This was likely a version of the Joker. He was an actor that got fed up with not getting roles. He got a big part and lost it because he was bad. He got fired like by intermission, and decided to take it out on the world by getting the Tinkerer to make him a Jester costume, because Jester costumes make a lot of sense. And that he was like one of Daredevil's big villains for a long time. So, yeah, Jester. Then there was Mr. Fear, with his fear gas that he made by accident, by the way, which I absolutely love. What he was trying to do was make a gas that would bring wax statues to life. Like, he'd run through Tussauds Wax Museum with this gas, and suddenly all the famous people would be alive. This was the 60s, by the way. But it turned out that his gas didn't work, but it made people very fearful. So he accidentally made fear gas. Now, I would assume that they would have called him Scarecrow. Besides the fact that the Batman villain is the exact same, Marvel already had a Scarecrow in another thing. So they already had a Scarecrow. So that's why he's Mr. Fear. And of course, there was the Owl. A crooked businessman, a crime boss with a bird theme. Kind of like the Penguin. Now, these villains, and I may be missing a few others that fall into this category. I believe there was one called the Matador. I didn't do an image for him. But these were your typical Batman type character villains, you know? And that's what they were doing with him. They were making him a Batman type character. And the interesting thing is that all of them would get used again and again. And then eventually, as time went on, people would take these characters and revamp and modernize them and make them legitimate threats. The Jester was an absolute joke, but there's some later episodes that or issues that he's pretty scary. Same with the Owl. The Owl showed up in the Daredevil series, Leland, and Mr. Fear. Ed says, first I thought she. Oh, okay, you guys are still talking about the character. Okay. Now, they weren't all like this. There were some villains that were pretty unique, and they didn't have obvious counterparts at other companies. And this had to start with Zebediah Kilgrave, also known as the Purple Man. And I'm not 100% sure Stan Lee and Joe Orlando had any idea of what they had created here. Now, this character's body creates pheromones that allows him to verbally control the will of other people, making them do exactly what he wants. Now, while he made for some interesting stories early on, the stuff they started doing with him later on, tied to the Jessica Jones character, and then as he was portrayed by David Tennant in the Netflix series, this guy became a very powerful, dangerous, and creepy ass villain. I mean, the Purple Man went from, oh yeah, he's this odd little character that Stan and Joe created, to like class A level threat and just horrific past with Jessica Jones. Now, another somewhat interesting character became an interesting character was Deathstalker. Now, he started off as your typical criminal. He was called the Exterminator, and he carried this time displacer ray that he used to commit crimes. Now, I don't know how a time displacer ray is supposed to work, but like a lot of these, Daredevil confronts him, the device gets damaged, the Exterminator gets bombarded with T-rays, as they call it, and he apparently is killed, but he's not. He ends up trapped between two dimensions, and he finds that he can will himself back to Earth, and only for short periods at a time. Now, if this wasn't creepy enough that this guy could just be watching from another dimension and then force his way through, he goes to AIM and steals these death grip gloves. So basically, his touch kills you. Yeah, I can see why AIM made those. But he steals them, and then he continues to go after Daredevil and fails every time. He can come out of nowhere with gloves that kill you with the touch. Seems like he would have been more successful, right? Is that just me? Okay. Moving on. The character of Man-Bull doesn't feel like a Daredevil villain. In the same way, Killer Croc doesn't feel like a Batman villain. But there's a reason for that, because they were both created by Gene Colan. So maybe Gene was onto something. And I swear to you, this character's name is William Torrens. That was his name. Now, he was hired to round up subjects to take an experimental serum made from bulls. Note, I didn't say volunteers. He was just rounding up subjects. Well, of course, Daredevil got involved and stopped the experiment. So the scientists just decided to use Torrens as the guinea pig, and he became a humanoid bull. And while he may seem like a kind of a one-note villain, he's been used quite a lot over the years, especially when there's a prison break. It seems like every time there's a prison break in a Marvel comic, Man-Bull is one of the ones running out the open hole. Just sure enough, just charging right out. Horns first. Now, he's kind of the Wentworth Miller of the MCU. Just constant prison breaks and then going back. Now, he did end up appearing in live action. He's one of the characters in She-Hulk Attorney at Law. So, another Gene Colan, Jerry Conway creation was the Indestructible Man. And this was an unscrupulous munitions magnate who became paranoid about his own mortality and secretly commissioned the creation of Project 4, a weapon that would imbue him with the powers necessary to survive the inevitable World War III. Yes, this guy was basically a prepper, a survivalist. Project 4 gave superhuman strength and invulnerability, as well as the ability to increase a person's size and project energy beams out of their hands. And of course, Project 4 got stolen by, I guess he was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and Natasha Romanoff. And this guy Indestructible Man had to go steal it back before he could use it. And this brought him into conflict with Black Widow and her new partner at the time, Daredevil. And there was a long period of time in comics where Daredevil and Black Widow were an item. She even got her name on the masthead. So now he would show up a few times over the years, always wanting revenge on Black Widow. So I guess technically he's a Black Widow villain. But he doesn't last long. He's always trying to kill her and take down S.H.I.E.L.D. It doesn't go well for him. He's indestructible. He's not very successful. Now, Daredevil also had a couple of villains who are not quite ready for prime time, but they're fun. You see them pop up occasionally, and they're kind of fun. You have to start with Stiltman. This was a scientist who stole another man's invention and placed it in a pair of extremely long, telescopic metal legs that would allow him to tower high above the ground. He attached them to a battle suit and started committing crimes. Now, to no one's surprise, people can see the guy in the shiny metal armor that's standing 30, 40, and 50 feet above the ground. And of course, Daredevil comes in to kick his ass. A similar villain, Leapfrog, he was an inventor who made a frog suit with a pair of electric coils on the soles of his flippers that would allow him to leap 60 feet up in the air or 100 feet long. I'll let someone else do the science on that, or the math on that. Now, Leapfrog has since retired, turned over a new leaf, laying on a lily pad, whatever. And his son is trying life as a hero in his father's suit, sometimes called Frogman. The character showed up in the She-Hulk as well. I guess Jen's just going to borrow Matt's most C-level villains. Is that how it's going to work? Anyway, you have to throw one more into this group, though. And even though he's not a costume villain, unless you count the one time that he actually stole Stiltman's suit, or he had another controller's suit at one point. Turk Barrett. Turk Barrett is this street-level thug that Daredevil is constantly beating the crap out of to get information. He'd been around for years. Frank Miller loved showing this guy, bringing this guy up in Rosie's bar. Just a great character. But they had so much fun with him in the Netflix shows, on Marvel Netflix shows, and they cast Rob Morgan, who's a great actor. But he kept showing up. He showed up in in Luke Cage. He showed up in Jessica Jones. It got to the point where Rob Morgan was showing up in more series than Rosario Dawson was. So I hope he's one of the things that they bring over from the Netflix stuff, and it's Rob Morgan again. And I hope they give him the Stiltman suit. That would be awesome. All right. The next villain is an early indicator of a different type of antagonist for Matt Murdock was going to start dealing with. The type who isn't necessarily a bad person, just happens to be up against Daredevil. The first time we see this is with Melvin Gordon, the Gladiator. He started out as a costume designer with delusions of grandeur, believing he was better than any costumed hero. Now, this would put him up against Daredevil quite a bit, but he would eventually reform, in part because of his girlfriend, and begin therapy. Now, reformed, he would at times become an ally to Daredevil, even provide him with some costume upgrades. He's another character that was brought into the Netflix series and improved upon quite a bit, showing us the fine line between hero and villain when you care about. Def says the Iron Fist series was whack. So, yeah. Now, moving away from him, we get to probably Daredevil's archenemy. There's one of two archenemies, but this is probably the one most people think of. This was created by Marv Wolfman and John Romita Sr. in 1976. But it wasn't until he was in the hands of another that he would really reach prominence. Actually, a handful of villains found kind of a new life under the guidance of Frank Miller, starting with the Master Assassin Bullseye. Now, he was already a great visual design, but what made the character work is this psychotic obsession with never missing his throws and how Daredevil made him miss. From the standard villain of the week with the cool costume and kind of a neat gimmick to one of the deadliest killers in comics, Bullseye is kind of the physical push to Daredevil. You know, he makes Daredevil go to his limits. Now, another villain turned up a few notches is the more anti-hero that would be Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher. Now, the character is similar in his desire to stop the bad guys, but is very different when it comes to the moral line. This pushes Daredevil to question just how far you can go for the greater good. Frank ends up being an uneasy ally at times, so having him in the villain category may be questionable, but he definitely started that way. And a character like the Punisher, who was very clearly a bad guy in the 1970s, in today's society is probably looked on more as just being an efficient tool against the bad guys. It's kind of weird that way. But the Punisher, like Bullseye, grew a lot with his association with Daredevil and really kind of launched him onto his own. I don't think there would have been a Punisher series if it wasn't for his time in Daredevil. Now, the character that went through the biggest metamorphosis, in the hands of Miller, is definitely none other than Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. Now, this guy was created in the late 60s by Stan Lee and John Romita Sr. He was basically a mob boss with the build of a sumo wrestler. He was just another crime lord to go up against Spider-Man. And because of the sumo thing, he was able to go toe-to-toe with the Webhead on occasions. But Miller took him and made him darker, more manipulative and powerful. He played chess while everybody else was playing marbles. He found out that Matt Murdock's secret and tore him down, stripping away everything. Imagine Wilson Fisk going up against Superman, and he finds out about Lois Lane or Jimmy Olsen, the Kents. What would Wilson Fisk do with that information? Probably more deadly than Lex Luthor. Now, there's no line that he wouldn't cross. And he would also, he's kind of the other arch enemy for Daredevil. While Bullseye's the physical match, and even though Kingpin can go toe-to-toe at times, Kingpin's the mental match to Daredevil and then some. So thus, those three villains, Bullseye, Punisher, and Kingpin, really push on certain aspects of Daredevil's character, and that's why they stand out so well. Now, don't jump ahead, JD, because it's going to be a minute before we get to the next one. Now, there are some other cool villains that come along, and I don't have images for them. You got Nuke, which is a total drugged out super soldier, Akari and Kurgi, Lady Bullseye, and for that matter, the entire ninja clan of the Hand. And most of them came along with Miller as he kind of moved the focus on Daredevil towards kind of a martial arts thing. Daredevil becomes a Ronin or a samurai in a lot of ways. But there's a specific type of villain that is oddly unique to Daredevil. And that's the ex-girlfriend. I don't know if there was a bad breakup involved or if Miller just decided to play upon the fact that Matt Murdock has always been a ladies' man with various girlfriends over the years, including Karen Page and Natasha Romanoff. But Miller started this trend of love-hate characters by going into Matt's past and creating Elektra Natasios. She's an assassin trained by Stick, the man that trained Matt, but she eventually fell in with the Hand and became an incredible killing machine. She fought against Daredevil, she died, she came back, she fought with Daredevil, fought against him again, became Daredevil at one point. It's really a complicated story, but we all had that significant other that could get us into lots of trouble, but the relationship's really intense. That's Matt and Elektra. We've also had those exes who we're pretty sure were crazy, haven't we? Matt has one of those too, except his has psionic powers and is called Typhoid Mary. She has telekinesis, pyrokinesis, and can telepathically push people to do what she wants. She also has 3 separate personalities that include the timid pacifist of Mary, who has no powers, Typhoid, who has access to all the powers and is very aggressive, and then there's supposed to be her original personality, which is kind of the balance of both. And then there's Bloody Mary, who is just way over the top. But, her origin is technically Matt's fault. You see, Matt was tracking down a criminal who went to a brothel where Mary happened to work. And when he confronted the man, the girls of the brothel actually tried to defend the guy and attack Daredevil. And in defending himself, Matt accidentally pushed Mary out a window, like you do, which triggered her abilities and her personalities. Now, so that's why Typhoid Mary doesn't like Daredevil. But Mary likes Matt quite a bit, and they would actually date while Typhoid was hired by Kingpin to kill Daredevil. And you thought you had complicated relationships. And finally, we come to the woman raised by Wilson Fisk, trained to be an assassin, then sent to kill Daredevil only to fall in love with Matt Murdock over their shared disabilities. Where Matt is blind, Echo is deaf, but she has the ability to mimic what other people can do, like play a piano or kick ass. Echo is another villain that ends up being a hero of sorts, even taking on the Ronin persona. But she goes down the initial pass because she was lied to by Fisk. She was told Daredevil had killed her father, and when in reality it was Kingpin himself. Now, in some ways, when she first came out, she felt like a cross between Elektra and Taskmaster. And given a diverse background and a disability in the same way that boy bands were put together in the 90s, you know, hey, we need the cute one and the brooding one and the fun one. But Brian Michael Bendis and David Mack made her into a solid character, and she's been built on ever since, where she's actually become a pretty good character, and we're going to get to see her in her own MCU series soon. Now, it should come as no surprise that 11 of the 17 characters have found ways into live action, whether they're the Netflix series or the MCU. Hell, even Stiltman was hinted at as an Easter egg. A good hero will stand the test of time, but being able to star in your own comic for decades, that's another thing. For that to work, you need good villains. There's a reason why Moon Knight keeps getting new comic series and then getting canceled, because he doesn't have that many rogues. People love the character, but you count on one hand his really good villains. Daredevil, while restarted a couple times, has had an ongoing series since the early 60s, and that's because he's made better by his villains. And also, people just want to go to see who he's going to date next and then find out what villain they become. So, all right. That went a little long, so we're going to skip the last break and go right into our key collectibles. If you would, JD. We have, of course, Daredevil #1 from first appearance and origin of Daredevil, Matt Murdock. This goes for $21,000. I have a lot of Daredevil comics. I do not have this one. If you have a spare copy lying around you don't want, please feel free to send it to me. This goes for about $6,800 on the median and $1,700 on the low end. Daredevil #3. This is where we meet the Owl. Again, very penguin-y in the first appearances. Yeah, JD, I think you could say that Moon Knight's his own worst enemy. The Owl, first appearance, $1,600 on the high end, median of 480, low end is 170. Here we get the introduction of the Purple Man, which, again, badass villain, was underused in the early days. This is one of the few times that Daredevil appears in court, and it's not long. This first goes for about $900 on the high end, median's 285, low end is 70. Here we go. The first appearance of the red suit. Thank God, that yellow one was horrible. Daredevil #7 from 1965, 1900 on the high end, 520 on the median, 90 on the low end. Captain America fights Daredevil for the first time in Daredevil #43. High end on this is 180, median is 60, low end is 18, and boy, can you tell that's a Jack Kirby cover, can't you? All right, moving on. This is Daredevil #181 from 1971. Now, this is the beginning of the Daredevil Black Widow ongoing team up. She would, like 2 issues later, her name would be Daredevil and the Black Widow beyond the title, like Captain America and the Falcon. High end on this one's only 60, median's 15, low end is 5. Daredevil 131 from 1976, first appearance and origin of Bullseye. High end is 800, median's 200, low end is 80. Again, great costume design. Wasn't much of a villain in the beginning, other than he didn't miss. Definitely got better. Then we have Daredevil 168 from 1981. First appearance in the origin of Elektra. This was a game changer. Frank Miller had taken over shortly before this, but this was the one that really got things going. High end on this is 380, median is 125, low end is 35. Daredevil 171, first meeting and battle between Daredevil and Kingpin. This is not the first time we see Kingpin in the comics. He appears earlier. This is the first time they actually fight. High end on this is only $40, median is 12, low end is 4. Then we have Daredevil 176, first appearance of Stick, who would become a huge character going forward, and how Miller was changing the series. This was Daredevil and Electro Sensei. High end is 25, median is 8, low end is 2. Was that our last one? That was our last one. Now, I know I didn't get to some of the bigger issues like the death of Elektra, stuff like that, because eventually we're going to want to do more Daredevil, and I'll just pick up from there. But yeah, I think Daredevil, while I love the era with Gene Colan's art on Daredevil and some of the villains and stuff, then there was a little camp, a little odd stuff going on, but it was the 60s and 70s. But when Frank Miller stepped in and took over, he incorporated some of the stuff that Gene Colan had been doing. There's this way Gene Colan would show motion, and that would be the solid form of Daredevil over here, and then these like faded versions of him going through all the movements across a panel. So you see Daredevil like dropping down and then doing a flip, and then leaping back up and doing a barrel roll, and then that final image was the permanent image. Miller picked up on those and was using some of those early on as well. Ed says, I honestly don't know the backstory of Daredevil. What did a good guy choose devil with the little horns? Okay, the reason he picked devil is his father was a boxer, battling not Matt Murdock, battling, what was his dad's name? Mike Murdock? Anyway, and he wore a red robe and stuff, and he ended up, basically, he did it in honor of his father, Jack. Thank you, battling Jack Murdock. He was basically in honor of his dad, but also I think his dad called him a little daredevil because he was always trying to do these tricks and stuff, even though he was supposed to just study. That's all Jack wanted, was his son to grow up to be a lawyer. So they didn't start calling it Hell's Kitchen until I think Frank Miller as well. So Clayton says 184 is his favorite cover. Very cool. Ed says he was on Chef Ramsay's competition show. Nice. Yeah, Hell's Kitchen is an actual part of New York, but it didn't get that name until I think the 70s or 80s. So, all right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I hope you liked the show. Tomorrow, we are definitely going to talk Ahsoka. It was a big episode. A lot of interesting things happen, and the ending is pretty shocking. So I am not surprised that the 5th episode is going to be in theaters. So, did you enjoy the Netflix show? I loved the Netflix show. It was the Daredevil I wanted. You know, I didn't mind the Ben Affleck movie. There was some flaws in it. I like the director's cut better. But I think that when they made the Daredevil series with Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, they really took the character from the heart of him and made the series right. You know, so yeah, I'm a big fan of the Netflix series. Dan, you're the fountain of knowledge. Well, thank you, sir. what is the Daredevil you deserved, but not the one you need right now? What was your one-liner last night, Jay? Now I'm kind of curious. Clayton says, me too, we seem to have similar tastes. I think that and Punisher were the best Marvel properties. Punisher 1 was great. Punisher 2, season 2 was a little weaker, but still good. Jay says, more twists than an M. Night drinking through a crazy straw. I like it. All right. We're definitely wrapping it up there, guys. Tonight is Comic Collectibles at 7 or 4 p.m., depending on which coast you're on or where you're at. Then Chuck is on with Talk and Treat Trivia. And, of course, kicking it with Henri tonight. So hope you guys enjoyed the show. I will see you tomorrow to talk Ahsoka. Have a great night.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.